Hello everyone and welcome to my Nicole guide. Nicole is a very good character, much to my surprise. She may appear as nothing more than a starter unit, but she can actually be an incredibly strong support that's applicable in all kinds of teams if built right, which I'll explain how to do. So without further ado, let's begin and talk about her kit. So when you're playing Nicole, she's able to generate this energy field that deals ether damage. This field is created through multiple ways, such as when she uses her EX special attack, when she uses her chain attacks, or her ultimate. Once Nicole generates the field, she'll reload her weapon, which buffs her basic attacks and dash attacks, but only a certain number of these attacks will be buffed, as noted by the number of bullets below her health bar. Now this is Nicole's entire kit, but while it does improve her basic and dash attacks, you want to ignore them completely. Really, they're not important and you're basically never going to be using them. Instead, you want to focus on her energy field, and you'll want to use it whenever you can, since this is what makes her the great support she is. First off, when the energy field is created, it's able to group enemies together, which is amazing. Her grouping makes fights so much easier and so much quicker, since your DPS is gonna hit all enemies at once, and not to mention that Nicole will be doing the same thing with her ether damage, and this can really add up. Next up, on top of being grouped, enemies hit by the field will have their defense reduced by a huge amount. At max level, it's 40%, which is insane, but even while you're leveling up her core passive, the shred is still an amount that's not to be taken lightly. The one caveat is that the shred only lasts for 3.5 seconds. 3.5 seconds is no doubt short, but there's two ways to maximize the time. One is through quick assists. When Nicole uses her EX special attack and creates the field, you can perform a quick assist right away. This is a technique you absolutely want to take advantage of, but to use it, be sure to have Nicole before your DPS, since quick assists only call in the next character in order. The other way is through chain attacks. When an enemy is dazed, you want to repeatedly switch from Nicole's chain attacks to your DPS's. Doing this will have Nicole create multiple energy fields, which will reset the 3.5 seconds defense shred, while also having your DPS make the most out of the 3.5 seconds, since he'll immediately attack enemies in the field with his own chain attack. With this in mind, when you're leveling her up, it's best to level up her special attacks, as you'll be constantly using them to create the fields. Be sure to equally level her chain attacks, since you'll also be using it a ton. Now, leveling her chain attacks will also level her ultimate, but for those wondering, you're not going to be using her ultimate, but only your DPS's. And then of course, level up her core skill as much as possible. Last and actually least, Nicole's special abilities. It has her buff the entire team's ether damage for 3.5 seconds again. And ether teams, this can be a really nice buff, but the nice thing is that it's not an ability that needs to be active for Nicole, as is the case for other units and their special abilities. This opens her up to a lot of team options, which we'll get into the team section. So with that covered, let's now talk about what W engines you should use on Nicole. So I've compiled all the applicable W engines for Nicole, and I'm gonna rank them from the best engines to the worst. Coming in first is the Weeping Cradle. This engine is indeed a high-end option for Nicole, since it basically gives her everything. It enables for her to deal the highest amount of damage with its high base attack and pen ratio, which for those unaware, pen ratio is basically a stat that allows attacks to ignore a portion of the enemy's defense. Then, the engine furthers her support capabilities. With its passive, it increases her energy, so you can create more energy fields, which of course is very important for her and thus a very important stat. Plus, it also gives a universal buff to your entire squad, so it's not just Nicole benefiting from this engine. Next up is another very effective engine, and best in terms of playing Nicole as a pure support. Her signature, the Vault. It gives a massive amount of energy to Nicole, which is great since now you'll have little to no problem with her energy. Plus, the engine increases the damage of your team whenever Nicole creates an energy field, adding more to your attack window. It's probably obvious, but this engine is perfect for her. Be sure to use this if you have it. Close in third is the Kaboom Cannon. It again gives energy, but this time it also gives an attack buff. The pure damage buff of Nicole's signature would be better than the attack buff, but still, it's a good way to deal some extra damage with your team. Now comes an option I honestly wouldn't recommend. the Battle Pass engine. Here's the thing, the only reason it's ranked at 4th is because of its secondary energy stat. Yes, the passive does increase the team's crit rate, which is indeed nice, but the way that you actually get the crit rate bonus is very restricted, and considering that you actually need to pay for this engine, in the grand scheme of things, the engine doesn't offer enough to be worth it. Behind this ranks the Slice of Time. The reason why it ranks poorly is mainly because it doesn't give Nicole any of the important stats she wants. Like sure, it gives Nicole pen ratio, which is good for increasing damage, and this can technically help, but with Nicole being support, a damage increase isn't particularly important. Finally come Reverb, Mark, and 2. These two are good for beginning or temporary engines to use. When it comes to Nicole's drive discs, there are a number of options she has, but the overall best disc for her to use is going to be 4-swing Jazz. The 2-piece gives 20% energy recharge, which is great, then the 4-piece gives a 15% damage buff to the whole team when Nicole performs a chain attack or ultimate. This set is great since Nicole will use her chain attack often, and doing so gives a very nice buff to her team, making both herself and the entire team deal more damage. Other than 4 Jazz, you can switch it for 4 Freedom Blues to have Nicole perform her Ether Anomaly reactions quicker, but I'd lean more so to Jazz. For the remaining 2-piece, you can equip Freedom Blues for more Anomaly damage, Hormone Punk for some extra attack, but for Electro for more pen ratio, or Chaotic Metal for extra Ether damage. You could also just use 3 2-pieces of the sets I've mentioned if you'd like. Now for specific stats for the 4th disc, you should use Anomaly Proficiency or Attack Ratio. The 5th, use either Ether Damage, Attack, or Pen Ratio. Lastly, for the 6th, it primarily depends on your build. Generally, I recommend Energy Regen since you want her energy fields active as much as possible, but the thing is that Nicole already gets a lot of energy regen from a lot of other sources, like her engine, core passives, and so on. Because of this, energy regen for the 6th slot can be overkill. If you feel as though you're already getting enough energy, you're better off with going Anomaly Master or Attack. For substats, aim for Anomaly Proficiency, Attack Percentage, and then Pen. Crit can also be good. Now let's talk about what Mindscapes you should aim for Nicole. One that everyone should aim for is her first. This is because this is her best Mindscape and it makes her much better. It'll increase the damage and anomaly buildup of her energy field, while also increasing the duration of the field based on how long you charge her EX special attack. Then comes her second, which gives her some extra energy every 15 seconds, and then last comes her 4th. It makes her energy field wider, thus making it both easier to group enemies and making more enemies be grouped up. Finally, let's talk about some great teams to play Nicole in. The first team I've got to mention is Nicole with Zhu Yuan. Now though I don't have Zhu Yuan, it's clear that this is the best team for Nicole. With Zhu Yuan also being an Ether character, Nicole's additional ability that buffs Ether damage finally is made useful, and the 2 Ether units can benefit from them. But NB is needed for this to be triggered, which is great since NB will also daze enemies for more damage and enable for chain attacks to occur, which you'll be spamming with Nicole and Zhu Yuan. With both Nicole's defensive shred and Anbi's daze, Zhu Yuan can deal some really high damage, while Nicole can act as a sort of sub-DPS. Moreover, with both Nicole and Zhu Yuan's Ether attacks, you'll get ton of anomaly buildup for some extra damage, not to mention grouping, which is the cherry on the top. For Bang Boos, in truth you can use anyone you want, but the Rizona Boo is going to be best since it is Ether focused. Another strong team is with the Cunning Hares. Now, while this team is the starting team, don't let this fool you. If you invest into this team and learn of their abilities, of which are very simple, they can deal some really nice damage and really help you get through some difficult content, as it has for me. Also, since all of these characters are in the same faction, each of their abilities are activated and they can perform really well, especially when you spam Nicole and Billy's chain attacks. Then comes a team centered around Corrin. Now, while Corrin doesn't rank as the best damage dealer, in this setup she performs very well. A big part of why is Lycan. He'll easily trigger daze and increase the damage dazed enemies take, which is great on its own, but he'll also trigger Corrin's additional ability, which furthers her damage to daze enemies even more. Then with Nicole's grouping and shred, Corrin is easily able to slice through enemies in mere seconds with her chain attack, but even her basic and EX special attacks can do really well as well. This team is at its best when it's fighting against multiple enemies, but it can still fare well against bosses. Well everyone, this is my Nicole guide. If any of you have any questions, be sure to ask me them in the comments, and check out my Lycon guide. Please also let me know what teams you're playing Nicole in. If you enjoyed, please consider liking and subscribing, and thanks for watching.